Welcome back to Open Window Politics. Today we're going to be doing a prediction for the U.S. Senate elections. So as you can see, we start out here with 43 seats for the Democrats to 44 for the Republicans. So these are the safe seats, meaning there is almost 100% certainty that they will end up in their respective parties' characterizations. So nothing too exciting to talk about there. But we will be going through the likely, lean, and then tilt characterizations for the rest of the swing states. So as you can see from prior predictions, some things have changed in the Senate election makeup. So we have the state of Montana, who the incumbent announced that they're not going to run for re-election, and that made it so the state of Montana no longer fell into the safe margin. I'm going to get to that state later on, but that adjusted. And then in Alaska, Mary Peltola announced that she was going to run for the Senate, and that definitely increased Democrats' hopes in the state of Alaska, moved it from likely or safe to a lower rating that I will get to later. And a couple other noticeable things. We have the independent in Nebraska, Dan Osborne, who is probably, we'll get to that state later, and then a couple others. So we'll just be going through the likely first. There is really only one likely Democrat state, so I'll get started with that being the state of Minnesota. Minnesota has had a pretty long and consistent history of voting for Democrats, so this isn't too much of a surprise. That's going to be one seat for the Democrats, and that brings a tie game, 44 to 44. So Republicans only need to get to 50 seats to control the Senate, at least for the rest of Trump's term for the next 2 years. And of course, depending on whoever wins the presidency in 2028 will play a role in that. But for the next 2 years at least, Republicans only need 50 seats, which means Democrats would need to get 51 to hold the Senate, which might be a tall ask, but we'll be going through these states. And then we'll get to the likely red characterizations now. I think there are going to be a few of those. I hinted at the state earlier, but I'm going to go to Montana. Montana, in the past, has been known to elect Democrats. They have Steve Bullock and a couple other on the Senate level, but they most likely won't this time around. The state has gotten more and more red. There is a competitive-ish congressional district. Montana is first. If I remember correctly, the Democrats are putting a lot of money in, not a ton, but hoping to win. So I think that congressional district may have a shot at going blue, but the state at large, I think, would remain in the Republican Party's category. So that's going to be Montana. And then there's going to be the state of Florida. Florida used to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, swing state that both campaigns for the presidency and the Senate and the governorship were all passionate about winning. It's a big state, good state to win. It has become increasingly Republican, so I think that would throw it into the likely red column. So with that, Republicans get to 46 seats, definitely getting closer to that 50-seat margin. And then there are going to be a few other states. I'm going to go with the state of Nebraska, also in the likely red category. This state would be safe red, however, there's an independent named Dan Osborne, who is running for this Senate election. He actually ran in 2024 for the other Senate seat in Nebraska, and he did end up losing, but he did significantly outperform Harris in the state. So he's proven that he can outperform Democrats as an independent, and he's hoping that will be enough to push him over the edge to win the Senate seat there in Nebraska. And then we will get to, I think the rest of these are going to be in the lean margin and tilt, of course. So I will get to the lean states. The state I feel the most likely to end up in the lean column would probably be the state of Iowa. Iowa similarly to Florida, used to be a swing state. The state does fairly often vote for Democrats in the House within their 4 congressional seats. In 2018, Democrats won 3 of the 4, so Democrats are optimistic they can flip some House seats here. Democrats are also hopeful they can win the Senate seat. I think the Senate seat is far less likely than 1 or 2, depending on how good of election is for Democrats, House seats. So that's going to be the state of Iowa, bringing Republicans to 48. And then we're going to get to the state of Texas. So Texas has been regarded as one of the states Democrats are really hoping to win. They just had the Democratic primary, and Tallarico emerged as the Democratic Party's nominee. And I think he is a good candidate Democrats could put forward. He's tried to portray himself as more of a moderate and has some broad appeal, and I think that that will be helpful to perform well in a state like Texas. Texas, I think in the long run, will become more and more Democrat friendly. But for now, I don't think this is the election that it would result in anything more than a lean red margin. In 2018, it was a good environment for Democrats, and Beto O'Rourke got within, if I remember correctly, it was like 2.8 points. So Republicans are a little nervous. Democrats are optimistic they can narrow down the state, potentially win it. At the moment, I don't see it, but I think any of the lean, even possibly likely states could go the other way. They are inherently going to be tough states to call. But with Texas, I'm going to keep that in the Republican Party's category. So that brings them to 49 seats. So they need to win one more to control the Senate. And I will start with the state of Alaska, which I think would probably end up in the lean red column. Mary Peltola is a great Democrat to put forward against the Republican incumbent. And it's very possible Mary Peltola wins. She did win the same state just because Alaska has a small population, so they only have one congressional seat, and that is the whole state. And she was able to win that in the past, and I think that she might have a good shot at doing well. When she won the House race, however, there was some split voting. There were two Republicans, might have been more, but two prominent ones, and that kind of split the vote and made it so Peltola was able to emerge victorious. But last I saw, there isn't going to be multiple candidates on the Republican side. I think it's just the incumbent that is running. I don't remember his name, but he should be the main candidate, or she. And that is going to be the 50th seat Republicans get to. I think there's going to be more good news for Republicans. I'm going to go to the state of Ohio. This state, I could maybe see it in the tilt. I think Alaska is more likely to go blue than Ohio is, but they're both going to be in the lean blue margin. This is Ohio, so it's a Republican held seat, and Democrats put forward a good candidate, Sherrod Brown. He used to be a senator for the other Senate seat in Ohio until he lost his re-election bid in 2024. So he is running again for the other Senate seat in Ohio, and I think he will do well. He's a well-known, fairly well-liked candidate in the state of Ohio, but I don't think it'll be enough to secure a victory. So that's 51 seats for the Republicans. And then we're going to get to the lean blue states now. There's really only one of those, that being the state of New Hampshire up in the northeast. So that is going to be one more seat for the Democrats, and that brings them to 45. And I'll start out with Georgia and end with Maine. I think Georgia most likely would end up in the Democratic Party's column. I forgot I accidentally did that. So that would be the state of Georgia. This is John Ossoff's seat. He is a fairly popular incumbent and is running for re-election. He won as a Democrat in Georgia, which is an impressive feat. The state has becoming bluer and bluer, so I think in the long run, the Sun Belt will become more of a Democratic stronghold. It might take a while to get there, but I think that the states of North Carolina and Georgia will go more and more into the Democratic Party's favorability. So that's going to be the state of Georgia on the Senate level. And then weirdly enough, I'm going to put the state of North Carolina into the tilt blue margin too. This seat, Roy Cooper, former popular Democratic governor, is running for the Senate election here in North Carolina. And there is the Republican incumbent is not running for re-election, so it is going to be a competitive race, and I think with Roy Cooper's favorability, it would be enough to overcome a state that is generally hard for Democrats to win. The state has, like I mentioned, they've had a Democratic governor, and they have occasionally voted for Democrats on the presidential level. Last time it happened was 2008, so it's been quite a while. But I think with the right candidate and good momentum for Democrats at the moment, that it would result in a Democratic pickup. So that is going to be a pickup for the Democrats from Republican to Democrat. And then that is going to leave us with these last two states. Michigan is the one I feel the least confident in calling of the four really crucial swing state of the four truest in the word swing states, that being Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, and Maine. I think they're going to probably be the most competitive. Michigan, I think, is probably Republicans' best shot of those 4 states at the moment. I think Georgia and North Carolina are looking really good for Democrats. I think ultimately I do have the state in the tilt blue margin, so I do think it would result in a Democratic victory. But if Republicans were to win one of these 4 seats in the tilt range, that it would probably be this one. And then finally, that leaves us with the state of Maine. I'm going to put this into the tilt blue margin. This state, this is Susan Collins' seat. She's been in the Senate for quite a while. She's a Republican, so if Democrats are able to flip this, it would be a flip, gain seat. And she has definitely portrayed herself as more of a moderate. She voted against the Big Beautiful Bill and a couple other key action items that have kind of kept her favorability readings with independents and some Democrats relatively high. All in all, though, states are just getting more and more polarized. We see states kind of naturally shift towards one party or the other. There are very few states these days that have a senator from opposing political parties. There are not many of them, and I think that with just the nature of partisanism becoming more and more partisan, that it would result in Democrats controlling both of the Senate seats, while the other was an independent that caucuses with a Democrat, but that is going to be 2 Democrats representing the state of Maine. This in the national presidential prediction, the state of Maine I normally put in the lean blue margin, so it isn't too surprising that that would result in a Democratic victory. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.